take a look at space, for example. So another piece of news came out this week. India preparing to write the next chapter in its space odyssey. And these 4 fighter pilots of the Indian Air Force will be the heroes. Group captains Prashant Balakrishnan Nair, Ajit Krishnan, Angad Pratap and Wing Commander Shubhanshu Shukla have been chosen for India's first manned space mission, Gaganyaan. Having achieved the feat of being the 4th nation to land on the moon and the first to touch down on the lunar South Pole, India is now reaching for the stars with its people. ISRO is planning to send a 3-member crew to space for 3 days in 2025 and then bring them back safely through a water landing. Now, the estimated cost of the Gaganyaan mission is 90 billion rupees or thereabouts, and if this Made in India space project succeeds, India will be the 4th country after the USSR, the US and China to send humans into space on its own rockets. Remember, the 4 astronauts won't actually be the first Indians in space. Former Air Force pilot Rakesh Sharma has the distinction of being the first Indian in space when he went in April 1984 as part of a joint Indo-Soviet space mission. Sharma spent 8 days in space. But remember, that mission was launched from Soviet soil in a Soviet spacecraft. This excitement and euphoria, of course, of that moment was captured through a conversation with the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi with Rakesh Sharma in space.
ऊपर से भारत कैसा दिखता है आपको?
जी, मैं बगैर किसी झिझक के कह सकता हूँ कि सारे जहां से अच्छा.
But as I said, that mission was from Soviet soil in a Soviet spacecraft. Gaganyaan will be from Indian soil in an Indian spacecraft, sending Indians into space. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Dr. Madhavan Nair, former chairman of ISRO. Dr. Nair, thank you so much for being with us, sir. So, of course, must be a moment of great enthusiasm and excitement for you as well, as India gets ready to send the first Indians into space on an Indian spacecraft. What can you tell us? What are you picking up about this entire project?
Well, as you know, India started space program much later compared to the developed countries, about 20 years later than USA or Europe and Russia. Now we have caught up with them in terms of the technologies. And of course, our founding father, Dr. Vikram Chandra, set a goal that we have to master this high technology and use it for improving the quality of life of the common man in the country. Yes, truly we have fulfilled his dreams in early 2000. And then we were looking for what next. The gap areas were the planetary exploration and space travel by the Indian astronauts. So these areas, we tried to work out a plan, and that was projected as a development sequence for the 2020. And in fact, that's the one which is carried through by the Indian Space Research Organization. And we are in the phase of implementing. Of course, as you know, as part of the planetary exploration, we have gone to moon, we have touched down on the moon, and not only that, one of our spacecraft has gone to Mars also. So that way we have proven in that area. And the next gap area was human space flight. Of course, it's quite a challenging one. Only Russia, America, and China have got this capability. And we were trying to get into this club as quickly as possible. The program was initiated way back in 2008, but somehow there was a lull period. But after the Modi ji has taken over, he is taking special interest in the space development. And as a result, the human space initiative has been cleared way back in 2018. And since then, within a short time, within 5 years itself, that blueprint is almost getting completed. As part of that, today, the Prime Minister himself has announced the names of the Gaganyaan, the Indian astronauts who have been picked up and trained in the Russian facilities and standing by, and the GSLV Mark III, which is to be used for taking these modules to space, is ready, and it has successfully completed more than 5 missions. And soon there will be 2 test flights before we carry the humans in. So that way it's going to be a path-breaking moment for Indian space program.
Yes, of course, Dr. Nair, and when you were in office there in 2008, that talk, of course, was already there about Indian human space flight. Now, obviously, there are lots of challenges in this, right, which go beyond what we've already done in the past. Now, we've been to Mars, we've gone to the moon, we've landed on the lunar South Pole, but here in the Gaganyaan mission, along with that is also the human support systems, because the primary objective, of course, is to make sure that the astronauts can go safely into space and safely return. That's the priority. So how do you assess our capabilities in this field right now and all the work that has been done here for the last decade or two?
As you rightly observed, when we are carrying the human beings, our responsibility is much bigger. When we are carrying a spacecraft, we can afford to have some failures if at all it occurs. And the track record of the rocket systems, which is globally developed for various purposes, it stands with something like 10% failure rate. Of course, we were slightly better than that. Our PSLV and GSLV have demonstrated about 5% or better. But that is not sufficient. Even that risk we cannot take with human beings on board. So we have to improve the reliability of the launch system by an order of magnitude. This has been the biggest challenge before ISRO, and they have been consistently working on this, how to include redundancies, how to include the fail-safe mechanisms, and how to identify the danger points, and in case of mission failure, how to safely rescue the astronauts from the rocket. And all these were before us, and ISRO has really worked hard on it and already demonstrated the crew escape system in a couple of flights, and also the module which has to provide the life support system dummy has been flown, and that way we have gaining experience. But the biggest challenge is to see that this habitat which is conducive for supporting the human life is created in the outer space. So that is the biggest challenge. There is a zero gravity. There is a lot of radiation from various stars and sun and so on. And all this has to be protected. And then, of course, the management of the food and the waste, and even condition the human beings for those conditions. So these are the real big challenges.
So I just wanted to understand, are we going to have to reinvent this entire technology from the beginning, or is there some of this technology that we can acquire from countries like Russia or America who've already done this in the past and done it successfully?
Well, in this field of rocket technology, especially the human space flight, etc., the technologies available in the market is zero. No country will part with the technology which they have developed and for our money. So that way, it is a really tough job for the Indian space community to really start from the scratch and develop everything, prove and demonstrate before we can carry the astronauts into the orbit.
So, Dr. Nair, what we are hearing is that there's going to be a test of the rocket system and the basic systems in 24 and 25 perhaps, and then perhaps 1 year, 1.5 years from now is when you will actually have Indian astronauts going into space, into a low Earth orbit in an Indian rocket. Is that roughly the timeline that you're picking up also?
Yes, certainly. As I mentioned earlier, the rocket system has to be reliable, and that efforts have been continuously going on. And the GSLV Mark III has benefited out of it. As you know, the GSLV Mark III, all the flights have been successful so far, and it has demonstrated its reliability to a great extent. Again, to monitor the flight performance in real time and take decisions whether to proceed with the flight or not is a big challenge. Again, the crew escape module, which is again mounted above the module, a rocket system, which will be almost like the jettisoning system in the fighter aircraft when the pilot has to abort the flight. So that kind of system has been awarded and demonstrated. And after the module which can carry 3 humans at a time, 3 astronauts at a time, it has been developed, and it is undergoing various tests before it can be cleared. Of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We have to mount this module on board the GSLV and make the flight as it happens with astronauts. And that is the unmanned flight which is scheduled for this year and next year. 2 flights minimum has to be there, by which we can demonstrate the entire system, not only taking them to orbit, keeping them in orbit in a safe condition, and then returning absolutely safely to the ground and recovering is a big challenge.
All right, Dr. Nair, one last question. Now, once this has been tested in low Earth orbit and the systems are therefore working fine, does it become much easier to plan more ambitious manned missions going ahead? You know, space station, going to the moon perhaps, maybe beyond that, who knows, Mars at some point. Does all of that become easier once the basic technology has been developed?
Certainly, I think this once we develop this technology, it is going to be a stepping stone for sending our human exploration to Mars or Moon and so on. But there's again a big leap forward. We have to have much more powerful rockets for that purpose, and we have to have life support system which can sustain for months together if you want to go to Mars and so on. I was really happy that Prime Minister himself has taken initiative, and recently in Trivandrum, he has announced that we will have our own space station as a next step, somewhere about 2030, and by about 2035, we will have our astronauts flying to Moon in our own rocket system. So there is a big challenge posed to the space community in the country, and that will give a big boost to the space technology in the country, and we will be in par with the leaders in the space club.
Dr. Madhavan Nair, former chairperson of ISRO, thank you so much for being with us.